Glad you could join us, everybody. I am Adesewa Josh, and this is Africa Matters. Persistent power cuts in South Africa are leaving millions unplugged from the national grid for hours every day. So, what does this mean for Africa's most industrialized country? And 6 months on, we find out how Zimbabweans are adjusting to the gold coins introduced to curb hyperinflation and protect their savings. And we feature a Ugandan entrepreneur who is pinning his hopes on eco-friendly shoe brushes made from cow tails. South Africans are grappling with the effects of a worsening power crisis every day. Last year, the country faced 200 days of rolling blackouts, and so far this year, people are having to live without power for up to 12 hours a day. The state-run power company, Eskom, can only meet about 90% of the nation's electricity needs at full capacity. Nearly half of its coal-fired power plants have either broken down or are under scheduled maintenance. President Cyril Ramaphosa suspended Eskom's 18.65% tariff hike, but public anger is rising. The opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, rallied thousands across the country to protest. Tshepo Matseba was at a demonstration in Johannesburg and brings us this report.
These members and supporters of the Democratic Alliance say enough is enough with daily power cuts in South Africa, which they say are affecting homes, businesses, and the economy at large.
Who's going to invest in a country that doesn't have electricity? Where are the jobs going to come from? Who's going to put food on the table? These are questions we ask.
I want to call on all South Africans to say, let us all put our hands on the plow and come to these marches and go to marches wherever you are in the country, because it will be the voice of all South Africans that we believe will turn the tide as far as government doing something about this crisis.
The power stations that were built under apartheid catered only for the white minority and big business. In democratic South Africa, the ruling party ignored early warnings to build more. When they eventually started construction, because of corruption and mismanagement, those power stations have not been finished.
The fact that they have been interfering in Eskom, stealing the money, not maintaining the infrastructure. The ANC is directly involved. There is no separation between the ANC and Eskom.
This is one of two marches taking place. There's another one in Cape Town. Two other issues people say have brought them out onto the streets. It is a proposal by Eskom, the state power utility, to increase electricity tariffs by more than 18%, as well as institute a permanent schedule for daily power cuts for 2 years. And they say they reject both those things.
Economists estimate that South Africa could be losing up to $92 million a day because of these power cuts. Agri-SA, South Africa's largest agricultural organization, says the blackouts have already led to food shortages and basic staples are now more expensive. At this poultry farm, scheduled power cuts, often referred to as load shedding, has killed at least 50,000 chicks. Farm owner Herman Dupreez says he now spends more than $800 a day on generating his own electricity to keep the animals alive. But fuel is expensive, and the South Africa's Poultry Association warns that if severe outages persist, more chickens will die, sending supply down and the cost of chicken up.
While we are talking now, I'm sure you can hear in the background the generators is running. We are struggling to irrigate. We can't farm on diesel. It's not consistent. It's impossible. Load shedding has an enormous amount of this corruptions and negative effects on my whole operation. And it's not just me, it's our whole community. It's the whole farming community. No one can do business. And I don't think we can carry on a lot more.
Let's hear more from Tshepo Matseba. He is the Managing Director of Reputation First. He joins me from Johannesburg. Thank you so much for joining us. Where is the government going wrong in its handling of the power crisis, and what should be done now?
Well, what you are hearing in the background actually is a generator running from the venue that I'm using right now.
Interesting.
And that's because we are bleeding and living in this type of setup every day. But where the government is getting it wrong is that there's no coordinated approach in terms of communication. So you get citizens and businesses and communities are receiving different messages from different stakeholders. While the president says something else, and then you have a CEO, outgoing CEO of Eskom, who says, well, this could actually go up to from stage 1 up to we are currently ranging between stage 3, 4, and 6, but it could actually go up to stage 8, which could actually mean almost a total blackout. So the disaster is that there doesn't seem to be a coordination across the board. Everybody says different things, and the communication you get out of Eskom, while there's some credibility in that communication, the problem is that it's not coordinated.
Some government officials have argued against privatization of the state-run power company. They say it will make electricity more expensive. Others say there should be more than one energy supplier. What do you see as the way forward?
Look, I think South Africa needs a healthy energy mix, which means that you need to invest in renewables because that's necessary. You need a bit of nuclear, but also you need to exploit the existing capacity of Eskom. And our short-term approach it should be to fix Eskom as it is right now, so that in the short term, at least we generate some capacity, so that at least small businesses who can't afford renewable energy, who can't afford alternative sources, they can actually survive. And we know that in South Africa, small businesses actually are the biggest employer as opposed to other markets. So SMMEs, those small and medium enterprises are crucial in the game, and they can't afford alternative energy. And so in the short term, at least, we need to put in the energy mix, prioritize fixing the wrong things, getting the thieves out of the organization called Eskom, so that the right people and the competent people can drive that organization. And then we need transparency because of this frustration. Consumer sentiment is very, very low. Investor sentiment is being affected. And then, of course, the mood around citizens is very negative. And for us to at least move somewhere economically, we need the short-term approach, which is let's fix Eskom's current infrastructure and do so as quickly as possible. Are we going to get out of this one quickly? Absolutely not. We anticipate that this will be around for a while, but at least at the bare minimum, the expectation is for government and for the private sector in particular to actually contribute. By the way, if you look at the numbers, the biggest consumer of energy and electricity are actually not your poor people.
No, they never usually are. That's the funny part of it.
And the funny part, yes. So big business should actually, one of our analysts, he's the former CEO of one of the biggest banks, and he has argued in South Africa that actually the people in South Africa need to stop blaming the government and worrying too much about the government, and instead we need to dish Eskom. Get rid of this problem in the short term and get big business to fund energy generation because actually they're the biggest consumer and they can afford to survive. But the small shop around the corner, the small community cannot afford alternatives, and therefore we live in the dark. And as I say, economically we really are bleeding.
The blackouts may linger for another 2 years before things get better. This is according to officials, and it's a fact. What can South Africans do in the short term?
Sure. The only way out of some of these things is firstly, because I'm not an energy expert, so I know that poor people can't even afford the minimum to get themselves out of this in terms of having a decent inverter and a battery at least to survive, and then installing one solar system at a time, so one solar panel at a time. So those who can afford should actually try to invest one solar panel at a time, and over a period of time, hopefully you can, and then try to use gas as an alternative. But the reality, though, is that this battle is won at the ballot paper Africa. So South Africans should go out and vote. Next year is the 2024 elections. They need to go and vote and put a government in place that they believe will assist us, them as well, out of this catastrophe. Because unfortunately, Eskom is publicly led, and it's going to remain like that for a while. There is a strategy to divide Eskom into 3 entities. How that is going to work and unfold and impact in the short, medium, and long term is another story that we don't yet understand. But the reality here is that we need a change in policy framework.
That's right.
We need decide government. We need to import skills if we don't have the right people. And I honestly believe if I was the leader of this organization and this country called South Africa Incorporated, I would actually be looking around to get the best skills right now to get us out of this and pay for the competent people to deal with this crisis.
Thank you for speaking to Africa Matters. Still to come here on Africa Matters.
I'm Cordelia Masale-Tulini reporting from Zimbabwe, and I'm going to explain to you the confusion around Zimbabwe's gold coins and how ordinary Zimbabweans are benefiting from them.
Uganda imports more than it exports, which has stifled the growth of its economy. I am Darren Alan Cheune, and I'm at a workshop in central Uganda, where one innovator is working to change that by creating shoe brushes from cow-tailed hair.
To Zimbabwe now, where gold coins worth more than $5 billion were introduced as legal tender in July last year, in an attempt to allow people to protect their savings after 20 years of chronic inflation and dramatic currency devaluations. The initial release of 22-carat coins was beyond the price range of most people, so smaller denominations were introduced in November. But even so, many find them confusing, as Cordelia Masale-Tulini reports from the capital, Harare.
Doba Moyowatidi is a father of 6, and he sits at this store every day at a busy street corner in Harare. He is one of more than 5.2 million people employed in Zimbabwe's informal economy. According to the International Labour Organization, they make up 88% of the country's labor force. Moyowatidi has heard that gold coins are in local circulation, but he has no idea what their purpose is or how they could benefit him.
Even to hear that maybe someone had bought a car with, what is it called? That gold coin, or who later bought a cow with the gold coin, or came here with the gold coin, and we failed to find change. We don't even know what it is, even whether it's money or what it is.
The government says the coins named Mosia Tunya, which means the smoke which thunders, after Zimbabwe's iconic Victoria Falls, were introduced to reduce the demand of US dollars and stabilize the Zimbabwean dollar's value. It followed an increase in inflation from 191% to 257% in mid-2022, and a collapse that saw the local currency plummet more than 300%. The first batch of 4,500 coins was released into the market on the 25th of July last year. They cost just under $1,900. Zimbabwe's Reserve Bank says slightly more than 25,000 coins have been bought so far, with large companies buying the bulk of them. But they remain out of reach for most Zimbabweans. In November, smaller, more affordable denominations of half, a quarter, and a tenth of an ounce were released to the banks.
Yeah, I think largely it will probably benefit those that invested in them, assuming that the price of gold continues to appreciate. Of course, the price of gold has been a very good hedging instrument against inflation. So I think the people that actually purchase, the investors themselves, I think would probably benefit more, even more than government.
The central bank insists the benefits are economy-wide. After the coins went on sale, monthly inflation fell to 1.8%, the second lowest in 3 years. But for people like Moyowatidi, it's difficult to see their direct benefit. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe says it plans to change that.
This is why you'll find that financial literacy becomes a very important aspect of what we're doing out there as far as communication is concerned. So we'll be out there explaining the concept of the gold coin, how it works, what it is, just to ensure that there's no one and no place that is left behind.
Analysts say that while in and of itself, the gold coin might not have had a significant impact in lowering inflation, it did have a moderating effect in slowing down its rise. Muatidi just hopes to one day move from just barely surviving to thriving. Cordelia Masalitulini, Africa Matters, Harare, Zimbabwe.
While Uganda has seen decades of annual trade deficits and often lags behind other countries when it comes to technological advances, one young engineer in this East African country is determined to help improve the situation by changing the shoe brush industry and making eco-friendly tools from cow-tail hair to replace imported products. Darren Alan Cheyune visited his workshop in Wakiso district.
Enoch Mwanguzi is a brave man. He quit being a salesman 4 years ago to venture into making these everyday tools. Enoch was motivated after a visit to a shoe shiner.
I asked him whether the brush was actually made from within Uganda. And he told me that in Uganda, there is no person that can make such a nice brush. But as a person who had a background in agriculture engineering, I saw this as not possible. It was a blow to me. So I took the challenge upon myself, applied all my engineering skills, went through different entrepreneurship training programs like design thinking process, and then at the end, I came up with a Yuga brush.
Enoch's products are made from locally sourced materials, particularly cow-tail hair, from local abattoirs. His team drills holes into wooden handles and then fits in hair taken from the tails using wires extracted from old car tires. After carefully tufting, the wooden sides of the brushes are shaped, smoothened, varnished, and allowed to dry before packaging. A quality cow tail like this can provide enough hair to make 3 small brushes. Altogether, it costs about 50 cents to make a single brush. Enoch's team is able to make up to 150 small brushes daily, depending on availability of cow tail hair. One large Yuga brush costs $2, which is half almost the price of an imported brush. It is also user-friendly.
These brushes are unique because the hair which we use from cow tails is smooth and it cannot scratch the shoes. The other thing is that the bristles are firm, so they cannot come out of the handle, which makes the brush long-lasting.
The government says Uganda spends $7 billion on imports annually, and most of the shoe brushes on the local market come from abroad. Economists like John Walugembe say that entrepreneurs like Enoch must be helped to boost local manufacturing.
They need to be supported to access affordable finance, to access the right technology and equipment in order to add value and to operate at scale. And then they need to be supported to access markets. That means that government must put in place affirmative policies to ensure that they can tap into government contracts, private sector contracts locally. But as they do that, they need to be very careful that they do not contravene the bilateral trade agreements that we've signed. For instance, under the East African Community, under COMESA, under the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also under the Economic Partnership Agreement that we hope to sign with the EU soon.
This workshop has produced over 40,000 shoe brushes in the last 3 years, and by increasing their stock of cow tails, they plan to raise capacity to producing 1,000 shoe brushes a day. Enoch wants Africa's eco-friendly journey to grow even further by creating bamboo toothbrushes and shaving brushes made of sisal by 2025. Darren Alan Cheyune, Africa Matters, Wakiso, Central Uganda.
The Worldwide Fund for Nature says glass recycling cuts air pollution by 20% and water pollution by 50%. Ghana imports around $300 million in glass and ceramics, mostly from China. However, a glassblower in the small town of Krobo Odumase is on a recycling mission, one beautiful piece at a time. Bushra Goktesh has more.
A red-hot ball of recycled molten glass being blown by Michael Tete, the only professional glassblower in Ghana. He is turning waste materials into art and wants to build a glassblowing training center.
My heart is to train young Ghanaians, both men and women, and that they can also learn this job as their professional work. And we can grow Ghana. We will not go to any country like China to maybe buy any material from that we want to use in Ghana. I want to make Ghana beautiful.
Glass can be recycled with no loss of quality. And Tete uses waste glass like soda bottles, television screens, and window panes. His glass factory is also home to new glass blowers like his apprentice, Janet Offie.
We support to come and establish our business so that we can employ more youth. In our community, there is no, the youth, they don't have work to do. They are smoking, they are blah, blah, blah. So if we establish this job, they'll get more work to do and they will not sit down in their house.
Several tons of glass waste are transformed into interior deco by Tete's team and sold at the handcrafted market.
We see Tete as contributing to environmental conservation, protecting life, because these broken glasses can actually cause harm to people. He is also generating employment.
Tete hopes recycling glass and training new glass blowers will help Ghana preserve its environment and promote a circular economy. Büşra Göktaş, Africa Matters.
Beautiful, isn't it? A South African vineyard is using an unusual but environmentally friendly way of protecting its crops, and it's drawing tourists in the process, a little bit like ducks to water. Rupert Stone has a story.
Why use pesticides when you have ducks? A vineyard in Stellenbosch is using a flock of over 500 Indian runner ducks to kill snails and insects.
We call them the soldiers of the vineyards. As they go through the vineyards, they eat all the small insects, so we don't have to spray for any pests in the vineyards. They keep them pest-free. They are the caretakers at the end of the day of our vineyards.
The ducks' long legs enable them to reach the plants. But they don't just help to remove the pests, they also attract tourists bemused by their habits.
It was quite fascinating to see how they follow each other quite sweetly and quite passionately. And I've inquired about the following, who takes leadership. And one of the guys indicated that, all of them act as leaders, and if one, kind of missteps, someone else will take over and, take the leadership to guide them through wherever they have to go.
The ducks even follow a regular schedule. They go to work together in the morning and return home in the evening. They're proving popular on the farm.
It's almost like raising your own children, so I enjoy it a lot. And it gives you insight, learning things you never knew before. You find knowledge here, and when you have it, you always carry it with you.
While the latest addition at the vineyard might appear a little strange at first, it turns out the idea is proving to be far from quackers. Rupert Stone, Africa Matters.
This week we explore Kasane, a city in the far northeast of Botswana. Kasane is close to the four corners of Africa, where four countries, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, and of course Botswana meet. Let's take a look. And that's our show for this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle @Adesewa Josh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters, TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week.